salt and pepper shaker. Truffle oil. Yeah, that's really good. I recommend it. Okay, I'm not, I'm new at this whole video production stuff, so just bear with me. I think this is the right one. This is it. Okay, got it. Today we're going to talk about how to build an API, a visual API using Brobot. And let's go into what an API is. An API is an application programming interface. An API allows you to control some external environment. And there are APIs for games that have been created for AI research. An example of one is StarCraft. You can move your pieces on the screen using this API, and you can get information about the game using this API, and then you can program your business logic, basically your artificial intelligence or your reinforcement learning algorithm, and not worry about the operational aspects of the game. That's taken care of by the API. You just access these objects through the API and things work the way you expect them to. The same thing happens when you're automating a process involving web pages with Selenium. Selenium has a module called the Selenium WebDriver, and the WebDriver is an API for HTML pages. It basically just allows you to manipulate objects in HTML, and you don't have to worry about it. It just works. It's the API takes care of it, and you worry about your business logic and your automation program. Outside of these small set of APIs, there are no APIs. It's the wild, wild west. What Brobot does is Brobot allows you to create a visual API in any environment. How do you do that? This is a series of videos that's going to describe how you do that. The visual API is a way to control an environment using visual cues. And it can be used for a number of different things. It can be used to automate boring tasks or tasks that are time intensive. It can be used to accompany you while you do some process and give you additional information or information that might be time intensive to calculate yourself to enhance your performance in something. You can do reinforcement learning. You can build large data sets of labeled images. You can build data sets of non-labeled images. You can do reinforcement learning on the algorithms that do representation learning. There's just a ton of stuff that you can do, and having this visual API gives you the ability to manipulate an environment in an unsupervised way. The big topic in AI for the last 10 years has been deep learning, and deep learning requires huge data sets. If you're a small research group or if you're an individual researcher, you just can't develop your own labeled data sets. It's millions of images, millions of labeled images. It's just out of your reach. It's too time consuming. It's too expensive if you can't do it yourself. And it's just not, oh man, this almost fell. Oh God. Oh, that would not be good. I just bought it today. I can't lose it today. Back to deep learning. Deep learning has been the big topic in AI for the last 10 years. It's just everybody's doing deep learning. And deep learning requires huge data sets. And how do you get a data set? How do you build your own data set? Well, you either need a lot of money because labeling millions of images is costly, or you need a lot of time and you need to have a lot of patience, which I definitely don't have. So I'm not building my own data set by labeling images on my own, and I don't have money to pay somebody to do it for me. A lot of researchers that will use data sets that already exist, and this is perfectly fine. For a lot of research, you don't actually need to build your own data set. You can use the data sets that have been built, that exist, and are free to use. It's often, though, that you really want your own data set. I mean, you have some ideas. You should be able to do the exact research that you want to do, and you should be able to have the possibility of creating a data set and to even creating a large data set if you want. But how do you do that? If you don't have money and if you don't have a large research group and you don't have a lot of time, how do you do that? This is where Brobot comes in. There's different ways that you can create data sets. One way is completely automated, and there's a tutorial on the Brobot documentation site in GitHub that shows how to do this. It uses a Brobot application to automate gameplay in a mobile game, and it recognizes where it is and what should appear in different places in that mobile game, and then it takes it captures images and it labels those images accordingly. And you can let this run indefinitely. You can, as long as you have enough storage space, you can collect as many labeled images as you want. You could collect millions of labeled images, and you can have a very large data set. We're going to be using a MMORPG, which is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game. And the reason we're going to use this is because these games, specifically the one we're going to use, has very realistic graphics. And we want to simulate the real world as best as we can. Obviously, it has stuff like monsters in there too. We want to work in some world that is portrayed realistically, that has a lot of graphical detail. And we want to work in an environment that gives us feedback. So if you're taking videos in the real world, you have tons of detail, but you don't have any real feedback. Whereas if you're working in a role-playing open world game, you have constant feedback in the form of static images that appear on the screen and that give you information about your character, about the world, about where you are, about what might exist on the screen and where you might be. And that is very valuable because we're going to use it to create an API. We're going to create a visual API using Brobot. We'll have Brobot create a state structure for this game. So caveat here, we need to actually play the game while Brobot is running because these fancy MMORPGs, they have anti-cheats, which means that we can't manipulate the environment. We can collect images, we can recognize our environment, but we can't manipulate it. So it's not suited for creating huge databases because it can't be done in a completely unsupervised way. And it's also not optimal for reinforcement learning because you can't manipulate the environment. But very interesting for doing research on some of the aspects of machine vision that do not require large data sets. Think about it like this. You're trying to develop an algorithm to make sense of the world, to build a model of the world, and you have no labeled images. It just gets constant input from what you're seeing. And your algorithm tries to develop a model that will identify features and will do some type of classification. One type of research is typically representational learning, where an algorithm will try to understand certain features in the environment that allow it to either manipulate the environment or to better understand what's going on in the environment. And this unsupervised learning problem becomes a semi-supervised learning problem when we introduce this visual API. And with the visual API and a Brobot application using that visual API, your algorithm will know more or less what's going on at any point in the game. You'll have an idea of where your location is, you'll have an idea of what your character is doing, and you can guess what should be on the screen. These guesses can provide you heuristics with which to structure the way your algorithm makes sense of the world and builds a model of the world. Just to give you an example of what one of these heuristics could be. Let's say that your character can go fishing in the game, and your visual API will tell you exactly when your character is fishing, right? You are controlling the game yourself, you're playing the game, and you go fishing, and Brobot sees that it's fishing. When it's fishing, you know that you should be looking at some body of water. And you can have your learning program, you can have it conditioned to try to recognize bodies of water or try to build a model of what a body of water is and identify where that body of water is, specifically when the character is fishing. Right, so this is a heuristic that allows you to then focus your learning on a specific aspect of the environment. There's an AI competition every year where researchers build bots to try to complete fairly complex tasks in Minecraft. And the type of research that I just explained here using the visual API and Brobot is really related to this type of competition and this type of research. I don't want to go too deep in this series of videos. into how to use the Visual API for research, because the purpose of this series is a practical tutorial on how to create the Visual API itself using Brobot. The vast majority of applications and the vast majority of environments do not have APIs. Most likely there's an environment that you would like to control with code that you can't because there's no API. And that's what makes the Visual API so relevant. The Visual API can be created for any application and any environment, including environments that are comprised of applications that themselves have APIs, but where integration is difficult. And whether your goal in automation is to take care of some boring or time-intensive task, or to do research using reinforcement learning or feature learning, or you need to compile a large data set of labeled images, whatever the task is, the Visual API is there for you, and the Visual API has your back. And as of today, at carne hueso o'clock, the Visual API is a thing.